Africa is the world's poorest, most unstable continent. In addition, it could be said that it is, along with Oceania, the newest. As of the 54 nations that make it up, only 2 had achieved their autonomy before the 20th century. So, what could be the reason for this? Perhaps it's the fact that they are very contentious people, or maybe very lazy. Here, I wanted to expose one of the possible causes of the many ills that afflict this continent, reviewing a historical event that marked the destiny of the continent without cold. First, let's set the context. By the end of the 19th century, Africa was mostly unexplored territory for Europeans, who had barely established some ports from where slaves were traded across the Atlantic since the end of the 15th century, such as Guinea, Sao Tome, and Senegal. Although, on the other hand, Muslims would do the same through trans-Saharan trade. But anyway, here we can see the map of Africa around the 1870s. As you can see, by this time, there were no modern states formed yet, and rather only some small fragmented kingdoms from fallen ancient empires like Mali or Zimbabwe. Instead, a large number of ethnic groups and tribes lived there, but in an enormous number, and many of them still exist to this day. In addition, the weakened Ottoman Empire still had some positions in North Africa like Egypt, which had already gained considerable autonomy. On the other hand, Europe was going through the Second Industrial Revolution, where the industrialization of these countries was accelerated by new energy sources that were in increasing demand, such as gas and oil. In addition, major powers were gaining more and more international influence, especially the United Kingdom and France, and the newly emerged Germany and Italy. And like all great powers, they were seeking expansion. But what are the causes of this expansion? The reasons were mainly economic. As with the growth of industry, more resources and more labor were needed to continue producing. Also political, because to maintain the status of power. At that time, colonization gave international prestige. And finally, ideological, because believe it or not, even before entering the 20th century, the ideas of white race superiority were still present in the general population center of Europe. Therefore, certain expeditions would begin through the interior of the rivers of Africa, the British through the Niger River, the French through the Senegal River, and the Belgians through the Congo River. Some of the main explorers of the time were David Livingstone, Henry Stanley, and Pierre Safogan de Brassa. With these expeditions, European rivalries would be reborn. The United Kingdom, who had taken control of Egypt and therefore the Suez Canal, wanted to expand from north to south to the Cape Colony, present-day South Africa. France wanted to do the same from east to west, so they would eventually clash at some point. So, how is it that all of this didn't end up in a conflict? If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to subscribe to my channel to stay updated with more content. Well, it's all thanks to our friend Otto von Wiesmann, who organized the Berlin Conference to resolve the controversies of Africa and thus distribute the continent as if it were a cake. This conference would be attended by the United Kingdom, France, Portugal, Belgium, Italy, Spain, among other European countries, and no African state. I believe someone was forgotten. After several agreements, all the territory would be divided except for Liberia, who had already achieved its independence from the United States. In general, the towns and small kingdoms formed did not put up much resistance and fell quickly, except for Ethiopia, under the reign of Menelik II, who resisted the Italian invasion who had already established themselves in present-day Eritrea and Somalia, but still suffered a severe setback during the Battle of Adwa. Regarding the naming of the new territories, well, it depends on the country that took the territory. Some, like Germany, considered them as pure colonies. France, on the other hand, considered some of its territories like Algeria as an overseas province of France, and others like Tunisia were turned into protectorates, although with less autonomy than the British protectorate of the Kingdom of Egypt. But the most peculiar and cruel way of colonization was that of the Belgian Congo, which in reality, rather than being administered by the Belgian state itself, was directly administered by King Leopold II until 1908, as if it were his county. Leopold was accused of having established a regime of terror where the death of millions of natives occurred, in addition to forced labor for the exploitation of ivory and rubber and mutilations. in case the work quotas were not met. African countries would begin to gain their independence until 1950. The African desire for independence, coupled with the weakening of European powers during World War II and popular resentment against racism and inequality, managed to consolidate the departure of Europeans from the continent, maintaining the borders that had been established during the partition. But well, the most important thing to highlight about this partition is that, as I mentioned at the beginning, there were already a large number of tribes, ethnic groups, and small states that were not taken into account when drawing the borders. So to this day, they are generally very heterogeneous countries. What occurs with high heterogeneity? Well, general discontent and civil wars, which, if we count those that have occurred since 1950, it seems that there are not a few. To this is added the fact that several African countries still largely depend economically on their former colonizers, and that in some cases, puppet presidents were put in place who acted more in common interests for both the oligarchic classes and the world powers than for the benefit of the people. That is, why is a country as rich as the Democratic Republic of the Congo the second country with the lowest GDP per capita in the world? Note that what I'm telling you here is a perception based on the historical events we've reviewed, but if you have a different opinion, you can leave your comment, always with respect. Relax, don't take it personally, and if you liked this video, don't forget to support me with a like and subscribe to my channel. Until next time.